Well, I'd like to welcome you back to another episode of The Uneducated and Untrained Pastor. I'm your host, Pastor Ronnie Qualls from Bowlegs, America. And I've got a real special one today. I want a really good friend of mine that we met a few years ago, and I'll let him tell a little bit about that in a second. But this is Brandon Harrell. And Brandon and I are just going to talk. We're just going to, it's going to be unscripted. It's just going to be unrehearsed. And we're just going to shoot from the hip about just topics, things we want to talk about. So, Brandon, what we'll do is I'll just start like this. From the best of your recollection, seeing you're younger than me and your memory should be better.
No guarantee.
How long have we known each other and such? When did we meet?
So, my first time meeting you was at the Preachers of Grace conference. It was my first conference, and I preached that week, and I don't remember if that was 22 or 23. I believe it was 23. It was the next to last one that Harrell had.
That was your first one?
Yeah, that was my first one. He had one more after my first one.
All right, so I
killed the whole meeting.
I thought it was
me, and it was over.
All right, so I went the last 3 years. I went the first year, the second year I preached. Apparently, I didn't make the cut the third year when you preached.
Yeah, you preached the first year. The first year I was
okay. So that's the year. Then he said, "No more of that guy."
Well, he was making a huge mistake. He probably should have had you back the next year and cut me out. And
yeah,
that would still be going on.
I don't know about that. So, So let's see. From 20, what did we say? 22, 23?
Yeah, 20. It was 22 or 23. Yes, sir. So three and a half, 4 years.
I got to be honest. It seems like I've known you longer.
I know it definitely feels like we've known each other longer.
Because the last 3 years I've made it to Jubilee.
Yep, Jubilee
down in
every
Smithville, year. And 2 of those years, Brandon White was the pastor, and this last year Scott Silvers was the pastor. Yes, and man, Scott was gracious. I mean, he called me and asked me to come and everything.
Yeah,
so I thought when Brandon was gone, I thought, them days are over.
The year before last, Brother, God used you with everything going on in the church like it was. That Brother Brandon was leaving and Brother Scott was coming in. And that message you preached on trusting in the Lord, man, that spoke to hearts, and it really helped the church there. It helped me, and I think that was the thing. Brother Scott he knew that you were a man that would mind the Lord and come in there with something that would help his people. And I love that meeting because there's no competition. It's not a bunch of guys trying to impress each other. Everybody's themselves. There's not anybody at that meeting that's putting on airs.
Yeah,
everybody is what they are, and take us or leave us. You know, and I love that meeting because of that. And so. And that's actually that meeting is where I met Harrell, and that's how I ended up at Preachers of Grace. So I've met a bunch of guys because of that meeting.
That's funny because I ended up there because of Preachers of Grace. Yeah. So I did the backwards route. But no, I tell you one thing about that meeting that I love. The first year that I went, I guess I preached every year. Brandon White had come up, and I had to apologize to him. He came up to do a men's breakfast for us. And it was like snowy type conditions. Mm-hmm. And I did not realize that it was like 3 hours.
Yeah.
I mean, I drove there, but I don't know, in my mind, I had it less than that. And when he told me, man, I had to apologize. But he came to the house after the breakfast, and we were just visiting a little bit. And he looked at me and he asked me if I was coming. I said, yeah, I'm planning on coming. And he looked at me, he says, just be ready.
Yeah.
Just be ready. And one thing I like that's very unique about there, they have that keynote speaker right before lunch, the same guy every day, and then another guy for the evening, a keynote guy. But everybody else, they just walk up and say, hey, can you preach tomorrow at 10 or whatever? And it's like, so, from my past, my firstborn days, that doesn't alarm me at all, And to be honest, I don't feel like it alarms any of those guys. Everybody seems ready to go at all times. So
it's funny too because a lot of meetings they call that around in our region here. They call that calling from the floor, and a lot of times they would call it popcorn preaching. And so they would just call on somebody, whoever the pastor felt impressed to have preach. And a lot of times I've gone to some of those meetings, and it doesn't take you long to figure out. Okay, nobody's getting called from the floor. This thing's been planned. They've already had the call. They knew this was coming. But you go out to Brother Brandon's meeting, and there's no phony about it. It's I mean, you might go out there thinking, I'm probably going to preach, but you don't know when. And of course, every service is different, and But I've really been helped by the meeting there. I've loved going to it. I'm glad Brother Scott's continuing it.
Yeah. Well, and one thing that I love about going out there, I've met a lot of different people, but going out there, I'm from Oklahoma, which, I always forget that Smithville's in Oklahoma. I want to think it's in Arkansas. But the thing is, the North Carolina guys come in, the Kentucky guys come in, and for me, I get to see a bit of a different type culture than what I'm used to, like in Baptist circles.
Sure.
Guys come in because I'll be honest, brother. I mean, we both would hold to, doctrines of grace, and a lot of those types of guys in those big, big circles, the upper echelon of people, they're very calm when they preach for the most part.
Right.
And I wasn't that guy,
Yeah.
I mean, I always was this guy that most time where I was at, I was kind of the pretty energetic guy. But I go out there, like I was telling you last night, I said I feel pretty tame sometimes,
Get a Brother Barney Brown or Al loose on us.
Yeah, they get after. Well, old Larry Winkler,
Brother Winkler, he's a GM. He's from about an hour north of here, and
really,
yeah, he's a legend in these parts.
Wow, so. Yeah. I can't remember the stuff he told, but he was talking about preaching as a kid and preaching to a dead frog or something. I was dying, man. Yeah. I mean, it wasn't he's up or was joking. He was just telling stuff, but
just the way he as a boy, that heart that God put in him to serve him,
even
from that young age.
And now I'll tell you something. I'll just give you my take on it, because I know there were some different opinions, but a couple years ago when Larry walked up to the pulpit that first night, or on that Monday night, I'll tell you my perspective on it. He walked up and he said he had a passage where he was going to preach, and he said he asked Liz to come back up and play. Yeah. And he sat down. I think he was kind of praying. I'm sure he was.
Sure.
And he walked back up and he said, I guess the message I have for you tonight is be still and know that I am God. And here's what I thought. I thought there's a lot of pressure when you're doing a conference. Brandon's invited all these people in. Everybody's expecting, and everybody there knows Larry, and they're expecting something. But I thought, to me, it was like there was something there that a man that's been doing it that long felt something to say, I don't need to do this tonight.
Well, and that's the thing about, and I know there was some real controversy about that. And I think it's because there's this, and it's a good thing, this culture of, man, preaching's that's what we're here for. Yep. Let's hear the word. Let's get in the book. But the reality is God can say more in a moment, in a line, in just a phrase, in a statement, when the Spirit of God is energizing that and working in hearts through it, than he can with a guy's 45-minute alliterated outline sermon that he's preached 14 times elsewhere. But the thing about it with Brother Winkler is, and I don't know about you, but I have this in my own heart when I'm preaching. There's especially when you preach verse by verse and you're going through a book, there are times I'm looking at that text, I've broken it down, I've looked at the words, I know what it means, I have it in my mind, but I don't ever want to go in the pulpit with it no further than in my mind. And I pray a lot of times, even when I feel like I've got all of that, I know that in my heart of hearts, I'm not ready because I don't have it in me yet. And I'll pray, Lord, implant this, not just in my mind, but in my heart. And it's not until the Lord does that I can feel like Paul said when he said, with all that in me is, I'm ready to preach the gospel unto you.
Right.
And I have seen it and I have experienced where there are times when that's not been the case, and I've got up and there's this pressure or there's this expectation or we're here for this, I have to preach. And if you want to feel like you're on an island and God's a million miles away, then go up there and give that a shot without him. No. And I think when you've been in it as long as Brother Winkler has, and when you're as sensitive to the Spirit as he is, and when you're as humble as he is, because that man is epitome of humility as far as, and I know him pretty well. I've been around him a lot. And this idea that these people are here to hear me and so now I have to preach. No, get over yourself. I remember reading of the 1904, 1905 revivals in Wales. Evan Roberts, if he got into a meeting and even felt like the crowd was there to hear from Evan Roberts, he would slip out the back door.
I remember reading
He
that.
didn't want to be the star of the show, the emphasis of some movement. And I think Brother Winkler and what he was doing, I think probably when he came to service that night, he was as ready to preach as he could be. I'm sure that if things had gone that direction, he would have had something to say. But at some point in the course of that service, and the Lord had spoken and the Lord had moved in some of those things, I think at some point in that knowledge of this message is in me, and I'm confident that God is going to touch me to preach this, that wasn't there anymore. And the best thing a man can do when that's the case is just sit down.
Yeah.
And on top of that, the whole week, and I think there was a lot of pressure on guys because everybody's wondering who's going to follow Brother Brandon, who's going to be the next guy or whatever. And I feel like some guys thought, hey, I need a candidate or whatever. But the emphasis that I felt like every message that was from God did have was, listen, get your hands off of it. Let God do this. And so whatever Brother Larry might have preached, it wasn't going to be any more potent. It wasn't going to be any more helpful and needful to that congregation than just telling them, be still and know that he's God. And so for all of, and then you have, and then Brother Brandon, I think he's like, let's just sit here and do what he just said. Because whether we like it or not, that was a sermon.
Yeah, it was.
Be still and know that I'm God. That's a sermon.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
It was a message. And now it's time to let's just do that. But there's so little patience for that in the life of so many people. We don't know how to do that.
Well,
and it was evident by things that, and I'm not throwing off on anybody. I'm just saying you can tell that there is a serious discomfort with the stillness and just waiting.
Well, the other day at your church, I was preaching about, the leading of the Spirit. Mm-hmm. Sometimes that waiting is how God's leading.
And that's not just in the next step of your life. It's in the service sometimes.
Yeah, but what you're saying is true because we start getting antsy.
Yep.
We've bought into the idea that if we're not doing something, then we're not doing anything.
Yep.
And
we've mistaken activity for spirituality many times.
Yep.
And I'll be honest, and for whatever whatever responses there may have been to that, I think out of that whole week, what he was saying was what needed to be heard as much as anything else that was said in those days.
Yeah.
And the Spirit of God's not, he's not dictated to by us and what we think in our whims. And man, I'm a big believer that a lot of the most critical points in my life have been outside my comfort zone. It's when God's put me somewhere I don't know what to do, how to act.
Yep.
And so it was good, and I'm grateful for the meeting there. I'm grateful for the church there, Brother Brandon.
Yep.
He and Brother Justin if I had earthly brothers, they would be closer to me than an earthly brother could be. I mean, I've known those guys since I was 9 years old. And they're like brothers to me, and it's been amazing to watch how God's used them both, and how He's using Brother Brandon now in California. And then when I pastored in East Flat Rock, we had the privilege of sending Scott to Oklahoma when he first went out as a missionary, and that was a blessing. And just seeing how the Lord's using all of that, and then the contacts and the friends that I've made, man, it's been a blessing. You got you and Brother Harrell and Brother Sanchez, Brother Fitzpatrick, those guys, Brother Threet, I love Brother Russell, just all of those guys, man. Brother Jeremy Houston's been a blessing, and
Williams.
Brother Jeremy Williams at Houston.
We're gonna call you Jeremy Houston from now on.
Yeah, so I can't get used to calling Houston Arkansas. It don't make sense. There's no Houston in Arkansas. It's supposed to be in Texas.
Those two Houstons are nothing alike.
But anyhow, but it's just a blessing, man. Just the friends we've made, the guys we've met along the way, and the Lord does all of that. But that meeting's been great, and so.
Well, you think about this. I mean, it's good to be naive. Like, I go there and I don't really know anything's going on. I mean, I've heard that Brandon's going to be leaving, but I don't know what he's dealing with. Right. I don't know that Scott's dealing with anything about maybe replacing him. I just get to preach.
Right.
But looking back, you think about what Larry said. I mean, you got Scott sitting there, and it's like, is God saying, "Be still and know that I'm God"?
Right.
Telling Brandon, I'm going to take you, but be still,
Yeah.
And to be honest, though, every one of us, because I remember when Larry said that, I was just sitting there thinking, man, sometimes we forget that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sometimes we just,
I think too, and it's just
stuff.
in the preaching aspect of it, and even when a man does something like Brother Larry does, I don't know that he understood the import of everything he was saying or doing. I think that's just what was in his heart to say. But at the same time, I think there was probably, because I felt it, and there's been times I've ignored it, and there's been other times when I've been really glad that I didn't ignore it and just go try to preach anyway. But when he had the sense that, okay, I don't need to preach because I don't think the Lord wants me to preach tonight. I've had that so many times, and I often think of the words of Moses, when he says, if you go not with us, send us not up.
Right.
I would rather not get in that pulpit than get in it without the help and the aid and the power of the Holy Ghost.
Right.
And I know I would rather, because I have, and I probably will again. It's inevitable as we do, but there's nothing more miserable than being in the pulpit and realizing, man, I'm on my own here. This isn't landing. This isn't getting off the ground. This is just me. And if all they're going to get is what I've got, we're all going to leave here worse.
Right. I think sometimes, Brandon, we get caught up in trying to preach a good sermon.
Yeah.
Okay, now don't misunderstand me.
Sure.
We want to preach good sermons.
You don't want to preach bad ones.
But it's more about, did the people say, oh, that was a good sermon?
Right.
And we need to be praying more like that the power of the Spirit of God would be working in the hearts, in us, that's speaking, whoever it is, but then that the words of God are really going out and doing whatever. Whether or not, I don't know if you're like me, but sometimes I preach and I think, hey, I think that went well. I mean, other times I'm like, what was that muddy mess all about, But let me tell you the backstory to that sermon I preached. Okay, trust in the Lord, right? Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. So you're going to love this. This started back at home in Bowlegs a couple months before. It was a Sunday afternoon, Sunday evening service. We rotate the pulpit, me, Nathan, and a guy named Brother Daniel. And I was thinking, man, I know this is not my week, And all of a sudden, it was about 3 in the afternoon, and I thought, it ain't my week, is it? And because I'm in my mind, it's one of them two guys. And so I texted him, he said, no, it's yours. And I was like, oh, man.
Thank God.
So, we're going to be up there in a couple hours. And so, and there had been some stuff on my mind. It was over in Matthew 6, we're talking about seek ye first the kingdom of God. So I'm studying this out a little bit. And I'm talking like 5 minutes before we walk out the door, I thought, hey, where's that text, trust in the Lord, And I go over and look at it, and brother, this is what happened. As soon as I read the text, I'm walking out the door going, I'm not preaching Matthew, I'm preaching this.
Yeah, sure.
And I mean, brother, it was just rolling,
Yeah.
So get this. And I'm not a guy that, like, when I preach something, I typically am not going to preach that again.
Right.
For a couple of reasons. My wife's going to be there every time. She's like, you're going to just keep preaching that?
No, my wife's heard so many reasons.
Yeah. But it was like that particular year, I probably preached that sermon in different conferences and revivals and stuff. I mean, it was like, I would tell myself, I'm not going to preach that again.
Yeah.
So I get down to Smithville. Not only did I preach it again, but if you remember, I said, somebody has taken my notes.
Yeah.
And now think about the irony of this. I'm sitting there panicking because I don't know where my notes are. And my text is trust in the Lord.
Yeah, that's great.
And I joked from the pulpit. I said, I think Sanchez stole them.
Did you ever find them?
Yeah.
It was Sanchez.
They were in my other Bible.
Oh.
I remember folding it and putting it in there. And when I got home, I was flipping through my other Bible, and I was like, there they are. So, Sanchez, I apologize for accusing you of such a dastardly deed there. So, but I thought, them guys like to joke around. I thought, that dog, he's seen that, and he swiped in things because he had left that night,
Right.
He wasn't there the next day.
That's right, he was gone.
And they were joking, like, go check out his sermon and see if he stole it. But, no, that's good stuff, man.
Well, and that's preaching too, brother. I wish it's funny you get guys who they've got a formula. This if you read books how to build a sermon or whatever, and I'm for structure, I'm for I'm for all of that. But preaching doesn't come from a textbook. It doesn't come from an understanding of mechanics. If a man is going to ever really preach, it's got to come from God. Yep. And that's the only way it can happen. And until God does that in a man and prepares a man, there's been so many times like I'll go somewhere and I'll have that. I'll feel like, yes, I'm ready. I've got this. Let's go preach, And it's not that I'm not trusting the Lord. It's just there's a preparation that I feel like.
Right. No,
and then I'll get up and preach, and man, it's no man's land. And I'll feel like such a failure, and you leave the pulpit with your head down thinking, man, I have made an absolute mess of this. And then I'll run into somebody 3 weeks later, man, that message really helped me. I'm like, well, it had to be God, because I know what I did didn't help you,
Oh, yeah.
And then there's other times where you've had a bad week or a busy week, or even just had to deal with sin in your own heart, and it's last minute, you're finally at least feeling like you're back in fellowship. And you go, and I'm going to the church, and I'm like, yeah, God's not going to touch me with a 10-foot pole this evening. It's not a good week. And then God, the Holy Ghost, will just overshadow and undertake and let you preach with liberty. And I remember more than once just leaving the pulpit with a gratitude in my heart of saying, God, I thank you for not abandoning me like I deserve.
Yeah.
And, because as much as a lot of preachers want you to think they've got it all together, we don't. We battle and struggle just like everybody else. And the fact that God will take us in a week like that and touch us and use us, man, it's amazing to me. It blows my mind.
Do you know who H.B. Charles is?
Oh, yeah.
I like to hear him. He's a really good preacher. But I went to a deal. The Baptist put on something in Oklahoma, and it was him and another brother, and they were kind of doing one of them, like, preaching seminar type things, I don't go to those things where I have to preach.
I'm not afraid of them.
I go just to meet people and fellowship. Sure. But it was funny. Somebody asked him in some Q&A time, they said, so how far ahead do you get your sermon ready? And he goes, well, brother, when you walk to the pulpit, it's ready.
Yeah,
he says,
whether it is or
he
not.
said most of the time, he said, it really, in my mind, is not ready. And I thought, man, praise the Lord, because it's like, I could go back and look at all my notes. Yeah. Usually those last little sections, I don't have anything for them ever.
Yeah.
If I've got, notes, and sometimes I don't, that's when I do, when it's really coming to me in a way and I can do a common outline, but it's like, it just, I don't know how to explain it, but I do know this, there's never a time that I approach the pulpit that I'm not saying, Lord, fill me with your Spirit, because I don't know how you are, but it's like I'm walking up there and I'm thinking, God, if you don't fill me, this is going to be a train wreck.
Yeah.
But as soon as I put my Bible down and I look at everybody, it's like this blanket of grace just comes over me.
Lord,
and all of a sudden there's a confidence there
His presence.
It's like, and it's an amazing thing.
And I don't want to sound like I'm against like seminars and stuff like that. I've been to some tremendous. I went to one a couple months ago down in Ellenboro, North Carolina, and I wish every pastor I know would attend something like it, because it does emphasize the necessity of preaching the text in its context, application, those things that so many times are missing in churches, where you have just, this little phrase stood out to me, so I'm going to build a sermon on what I think about this phrase,
right,
and then run all over the Bible to make points or whatever. But at the same time, those things have a place, but it can't be the preeminent place. Not when it comes to preaching in the Spirit.
Yeah, exactly.
But I'm definitely in favor of those things. But talking about studying things, I hear guys, and I believe that some guys are wired this way and they're able to do this. But I hear guys talking about, I prepare sermons a month in advance, and they can tell you what date they're going to preach, what text. And brother, it's just never worked that way for me.
No, it didn't work that way.
I went to the pulpit a few weeks ago, and I've been preaching through Acts there at Big Cove, and I was dealing with the book of Acts in light of biblical missions. And I was going to deal quickly with three things the church has to do or have to be present in the church in order to accomplish missions. And then I was going to run through the book of Acts and just show the model of it and how they supported missionaries. Missionaries were sent out of the church, those kinds of things. And the reason I was just going to run through those first three things is because we're going to see them throughout the book.
Right.
And it was three things. One was, all throughout the book of Acts, you find that they were filled with the Spirit of God. They were told, don't move until He comes. You can't do this work without the presence and power of God. And then the second thing you notice is the preaching. It wasn't all of the gimmicks and the things that churches nowadays think they have to do in order to win souls and build churches. And it was preaching the word, and then it was praying. And you see it in that first chapter. They were all in one accord. They prayed, gathered together in one accord, and prayed. And here I was going to blow through those three and run on to the next. And brother, I got to the deal on prayer there, and the Lord just, I don't know, just emphasized it in my heart. And I spent the next 20 minutes preaching on that, and that was the last thing I dealt with. I didn't even get to what I thought I was going to get to deal with.
Yeah.
But that's part of it. And so if I'd have had my little schedule of here's what I'm going to preach, here's what I'm going to preach, and I did in a sense, but I'm not married to it to the point that, I can't deal with this, Lord. Leave me alone on that. I'll get to that when I told you I would.
Right.
I told him I was coming to here, And so I can't do that. I guess it'd be okay, but you got to leave room. And one of the criticisms, especially of exposition that I've heard, especially in our region, is, if you're preaching through a book, what if the Lord wants you to preach something else? Well, you need to pray and see what to preach. Well, I do that before I start a book.
Yeah.
Yeah,
exactly.
And then as you're working through a book, you'll find that God knew when you prayed about what book to go into, everything that church was going to face throughout the course of preaching through that book. And it's amazing how many times those things line up perfectly.
Exactly.
And so, and then too, as far as like you're talking about Brother HB's statement about, when you get in the pulpit, it's ready.
Yeah.
I think it was Brother John O. Sims. It may not have been him. But somebody had said something along these lines. They said preaching is when you hit pause on study to set out what you studied already. And really, that's all it is. I'm studying until the time I get in the pulpit. There's still something that I'm looking at. There's something I'm thinking about. There's something that the Lord's working in my heart. And I remember one church, there was some criticism of the pastor because he was flipping out during the Sunday school and he was going to just working on his sermons, bivocational guy, busy weeks and stuff. And they took that to me, he's not studying during the week. Well, it's not that at all. It's the fact that as you go through the week and study, you're looking at those texts and there's constantly things coming. And it doesn't matter if I spent 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, I'm still going to be thinking about that text, thinking about that sermon, working on introductions, working on how am I going to bring this thing to a close at the end of this. And so the study never really stops until you're in the pulpit. Right. And for me, as soon as I'm out of the pulpit, I'm back into study in my mind.
Right. And this right here, like my channel is called The Uneducated and Untrained Pastor, and it's stuff like this that pastors need to hear, because years ago we heard the famous thing that like John MacArthur studies 40 hours for a sermon.
I doubt it.
Well, here's what I'll say. If I believe it's true, it's just the way you described it.
Right.
You may be running a bread truck.
Yep.
I used to do. I worked underground in a mine. I did phone work. I was carrying mail. I did a lot of different things. Construction. There was always these things going through my mind, and just like you, I mean, my mind works in a strange way. It's like I can picture a part of the message down here, but it's that's not the start. And then on that one morning, God just everything stops. He puts everything together.
Yeah. I don't remember. Like, you remember those little graphs where it would have like thoughts up here? It was, I guess, in English class or something when we'd have to write, and you got these bubbles, the ideas, and then you're supposed. That's how a sermon is for me. So many times
that right there,
I'm reading through the text, and it's like, and I feel like I've got just these bubbles above my head with this thought and that thought and this thought, and I usually have gotten them written down on paper, and they're out of order, And all I'm trying to do is say, Lord, help me put these in the proper order. And so sometimes you'll get, okay, well, this portion of the verse, these three thoughts are going to come to play. And then you got to figure out, well, where's this going to be in regard to which thought goes first here?
Right.
And a lot of that, you're trying to be logical in it. And then a lot of times I'll have 3 or 4 things there and I'll hit 2 of them and the others just take wings and fly away. So I just leave them. I don't even mess with
right.
them.
There's those times that you're preaching and here's another thing. Have you ever had something that was like big to you, and this is the part you wanted to put out there,
and you didn't even touch it?
And you didn't touch it.
Yeah, it didn't come out.
It's like the Lord says, you wanted to do that, but that's not what I had in mind, you know.
Yeah. Well, Lord, can I at least deal with it next time?
Yeah.
You know. So, and that's the thing about preaching. Every preacher's different. Every method of study is different, and I think a lot of times guys with good intentions that do really want to help people end up trying to get people to do it like they do it.
Oh, that's
just won't fly for some people. You're just not going to be wired the same.
Yeah, when I sit down and I'm helping somebody, you know, kind of learn some things and such, I tell them right off. I said, listen, you don't try to be me. Don't try to be anybody. Just be you.
Yep.
And I say, look, when I do it, I said, here's the way it comes to me. Here's the way my mind works. I said, but that may not be the way your mind works.
Sure.
And I said, I'm not trying to make you become like me. Just like you said, everybody does it different.
Yeah.
And so that's what I love. Like you go down there to the Jubilee, well, even at Preachers of Grace, we got a variety of different styles. I mean, some guys were very structured, perfect outline, bullet points, all that. Great. Yeah. Other guys up there and he ain't got a note one.
Sure.
You know, and
in reality, it's not always the exact same for me. Sometimes I've got no outline.
Me too.
And then sometimes I've got just bullet points, and then other times I've got little notations along through the outline that guide me in those things. And then there's other times, even in preparation, I'll see points in the text and have an outline before I really have, the depth of those things. And then sometimes it's opposite, and then sometimes I've been preparing to study one text, and it'll take me to another text. The next thing I know, it's like you're talking about. I'm preaching that text instead of the one I was looking at. And, but you just there's not necessarily a right way or a wrong way.
Well, one thing, especially expository preaching, there's so many guys that it's like they do it this way, then they want to make rules for everybody.
Yeah.
And a lot of the guys that pastor, it's like, well, if this guy said to do this, then by all means I've got to do that. I'm not wired that way because, and I'll tell you this, it's like they say, when you're expositing a text, have you ever just read Jesus' sermons? They weren't 3-point sermons.
No, definitely not. No.
Maybe 33 and 53. But, it's like, and to me, it always goes back to this. And the Lord has just really impressed this on me the last 5 or 6 years, maybe more, but we need to get back to being filled with the Spirit, being led by the Spirit. And I'm going to tell you, Brandon, that idea of being led by the Spirit, when we really understand it, because we kind of get accustomed to like, well, we've got to do it this way, it can be kind of fearful for people.
Sure.
It's like just to let go and just, the old saying, let go and let God. I don't know about that, but but it's kind of true in this situation.
Well, and the thing about it is, and I don't know where it happened. I can't take you to a point in time when this took place, but it seems like in just evangelicalism as a whole, there was some point where we figured it out, and we didn't really need the power of the Spirit to get up and preach a sermon. And then what happened is we started to notice, okay, folk aren't coming to the Lord.
Exactly.
And people that are making professions, they're not sticking.
You got to almost babysit.
And so then they're like, okay, well, what are we doing wrong? And instead of going back to preaching the word, being filled with the Spirit, and praying,
amen, we
decided, okay, well, we must need to have this, or we must need to start this program.
Instead of going back to the old paths,
and now we're to the place where this past Easter, I see video of some mega church somewhere. I don't know where it was or who it was, the idiot pastor is ziplining across the platform in this church, and it's appalling, man.
Yes.
Can you imagine the Apostle Paul ziplining into a church in Thessalonica?
Yeah. No,
That's
no, I
not what
cannot.
they did.
Yeah.
That's just not what they did. They were filled with the Spirit, they preached the word, and they prayed. And as simple as that is just too complicated for most Christians in these days to get a hold of.
Well,
and the problem is when you do that, and this is the issue, and it goes back to ego. The issue is when you do that, you don't get credit. Nobody looked at those unlearned and ignorant men and said, "Boy, Peter really done something here."
right.
They perceived that they had been with Jesus. And when you do it the biblical way, God gets all the glory and man doesn't. And that's just too hard a pill for most people to swallow in these days.
Oh, yes, exactly. And the thing of it is, when people did want to fall down and worship Paul or Peter or whatever, they said, "Hey, stop that nonsense." That's another thing. Good day, man. When people start kind of talking about, like, man, that guy's really this or that.
Yeah.
They mean, I know that people mean it in the best way because I'm guilty of the same thing.
Sure.
But man, it's a dangerous thing to start doing.
Yeah.
You know?
Please don't tell me. If you think that, don't tell me.
But you know
what I mean?
But the
It's
sinful part of us is
we'll get puffed
we
up.
like to hear it and
Exactly.
it feels good.
Yes.
And
That's why I'm saying don't tell me because I might believe it. And I know it's not true.
Yeah, and the thing is, then we start falling into this thing like, well, people are saying this, so they're expecting something good.
Yeah.
You know, and then all of a sudden you're doing things wrong, trying to, well, man, if they like that one, I'll put this up, you know, and man, it's dangerous ground, slippery ground there.
It really is, and that's the paradox of humanity, right? God uses humanity, and God uses humanity. You know, it's like, man, but that's his way.
No, what you just said a while ago, that part about, you know, you said some time ago we got away from being filled and being led. I feel like we have put so much confidence in our learning, our education. And you think about the time we live in, we have access. I mean, you and I have access to everything you can get in a seminary.
Yeah.
Okay. Now we've got to do a little more digging and stuff, but still, it's not that difficult.
Right.
And you think about the guys in the old days, what did they do?
Yeah.
They prayed, just like you said a while ago. They prayed and they preached.
Yeah.
Look at Kenneth Cates.
Oh, I know.
Speaking of that, don't let me leave with
Yeah,
that.
absolutely. I've thought about it already.
Yeah, I'll be like, I'd be so mad. But that guy, you know, comes to the Lord and he spends sometimes all night in the woods in prayer.
Yeah.
You know, he's in the Word of God. He's not a guy that anybody would look at and say, "Hey, man, this guy's going to be the next whatever," you know. But God doesn't look like that.
Sure,
you know, He didn't look at us like that, and it's just who's going to really give theirself to the Lord like that and not worry about what everybody's saying.
Sure.
And just go do the work.
And that's been an emphasis in my own heart that the Lord's been making to me. It seems like every time I turn around, He's hitting me with the same hammer of just absolute surrender. You know, dying to who I think I am or who I think I want to be,
right?
And just being whatever He has, you know, and then just absolutely trusting Him, and man, that's where it all has to start. It's just like John the Baptist said. I was praying this morning and it came to mind. He must increase, I must decrease, and you can't both increase at the same time.
Right.
It just can't
right.
happen.
Yeah, that's true, man. Well, I think we have probably perfected all the ideas of preaching, man.
I don't know about all of that. No, see, that's the problem, isn't it? We know, we just putting it into practice.
The older I get, the more that I have learned, the more I realize what I don't know.
Yeah.
You know?
Brother Bo Paris, who preceded us at the ministry there, Brother James Esser followed him, but Brother Bo that was there for about 60 years, I used to, when I talked to him on the phone or call him or whatever, I'd say, "What are you doing, Brother Bo?" He'd say, "I'm working on my ignorance." And this was a man who'd been in the pastorate for nearly 60 years, you know, and a man that well read. His wife she had passed several years. He was a widower for I think over 20 years.
Wow.
And he basically just read books all day, and he was a student. And when I would hear him say that, I think, man, if he's still got something to work on, what kind of shape am I going to be in? And it's the truth. You're not going to arrive here.
Right. Now he's not related to Jared, is he?
No.
Okay.
Not that I'm aware of. So, but anyhow, it's definitely a long road of conformity to the image of Christ.
It is.
But and two, I would say just kind of before we move on from that.
Oh, we don't have to move on either.
Yeah. Well, I'm just thinking about so much of what I hear and so much of what I see, and you sent a clip this morning. We were looking at it there. Those clips from the sermon concerning worldliness and how many times it's robed in this celebrity preacher culture. And brother, I hate that stuff so bad.
Oh, I do too.
But at the same time, it's kind of like it's such a pitfall, and it's everywhere. It doesn't even have to be the guys in these big conferences.
No, it does not.
There are circles of men, man. I know guys who probably anybody outside of the Southeast has never heard of. But the way they're treated and looked at, it's borderline worship of these guys.
Oh, I call it idolatry in the church.
Yeah, and they've got these huge meetings, and they have all of the heavy hitters come in and preach their conferences, and each little movement has got its figurehead, and that in and of itself is the problem. The figurehead is supposed to be Jesus, and I prayed before, Lord, don't ever let me be the figurehead of anything. And James warned against it, didn't it? Be not many teachers. There's a responsibility that comes along with those kinds of things that, man, ought to make us shudder. It's like the man that came to Spurgeon, and he's like, oh, man, you got all these thousands of people coming to your church, and he's lamenting that he's only got a few, and Spurgeon just reminded him, well, you're going to give an account for those. Do you really want more than that to give an account for?
Right.
And that's weighty, brother. It really is weighty.
No, and we know that in all that we're saying, when God does put a guy on a platform like a Spurgeon or a Whitfield, those are guys that weren't looking for it.
No.
And I think there's probably very few people that can probably handle that. I've thought this before, you take a guy like MacArthur before he passed. I mean, one thing you got to admire is like 50 plus years of ministry and no controversy, no scandals, in his life. But everything MacArthur said was under a microscope.
Sure.
Can you imagine you or me, everything we say? We wouldn't survive. I wouldn't survive.
Yeah, there are recordings of sermons that no longer exist.
Yeah.
And it's because I had control over that, over whether or not they remained. And I'm like, unto God, I hope nobody ever hears that, Yeah. And that's one of the reasons friends are important. You can bounce things off each other. I don't know how many times Brother Scott or Brother Brandon and I or somebody have had a conversation, and I'll be like, I've been thinking about this, and I'll say something, and they'll let me know just how utterly stupid it is, and say, please don't ever say that in public. And then, by the time it's over, I'm like, I'm glad I never brought that one out.
Yeah. Kind of like that, sometimes you get something in your mind that's going to sound really just gravity to this. Like I told you about that first wedding I did, and I said, today, life is over as you know it.
Yeah.
Looking back on it, I can't believe I didn't get a bunch of amens. But when that came out and I could hear it audibly, I was like, oh my gosh, that is not what I...
That sounds like I'm telling them there's no more joy.
Yeah.
Exactly. Ever be had again.
Yeah, that was funny. But, so let's do this, man. Let's talk a little bit about what you're doing now, just as a pastor, and the work that you're doing. I mean...
So most everybody that knows me, is aware that we had pastored a church for nearly 12 years, stepped away from that. And even during that time, I was working with Global Baptist Mission and the Russian Bible Society. I worked from 2012 to 2017 with Brother Bob Doom. And then in 2012, 21, he passed away, and his brother-in-law, Brother Ben, took the ministry, and I came on as assistant director, and I've been doing that ever since. So in that, it's really, there's a lot more than than we've probably got time to talk about. But the premier thing is we're a literature ministry. We oversee translation work when it comes to scriptures, as well as literature being translated out of one language to another. Some of the James Stewart books, we're working on some of that.
Yeah.
And then Christian books, Brother James Stewart's books that he wrote, and then other authors that we publish, keeping those in print. And then we distribute scriptures. We've sent 5,000 Russian Bibles to Latvia last year, those kinds of things. And basically, I guess the heartbeat that the Lord's put in me for the ministry since I've been here is just Bibles in hands, books in hands. And, obviously the best gift you can ever give anybody is a Bible in their language.
Right.
And so we try to make as many Bibles available as we can. And then the books that we have here. And a lot of what we've talked about are the emphasis. Brother Stewart, he understood the ministry of the Spirit and the necessity of those things. And so I've had the privilege over the last 4.5 years of being able to introduce him to people that had never heard of him or read after
I'm one of them.
and, and it's just solid Christian material that'll help you live your daily life, your daily life in Christ. We don't have a lot of theology books or systematic theologies, just practical biblical living, and that. And so in the course of all of that, my wife and I, she actually quit the bank. At the same time I left the pastorate to enter into this ministry. She came on as a bookkeeper, and I went on the road as a missionary, raising support on deputation. In about 9 months, the Lord brought in our support, and so since that time, I've just been traveling, preaching, setting up book tables, laboring here at the ministries. I've been wanting for some years to have our books in e format, like on Kindle, and I just completed the first one. That'll be an ebook. We've got a little series of booklets called the Road Building for Revival series, and I've got Christian Life and How to Live It ready. I'm going to go ahead and complete that series and then release them. So we're going to finally have some ebooks out there. There's so many people using that format now. Myself, I use them. I love hard copies of books, but I'm not a wealthy man, so I'm limited on exactly how many of those I can get.
Yeah.
And I've probably got as many books on my iPad as I do on my bookshelf, just because of cost effectiveness and availability. I can take them everywhere I go.
See, I'm so old school, Brendan. It's hard for me to read on a computer screen, my phone or whatever. I like that. I like that
prefer
copy,
it.
but I know exactly what you're saying. Yeah. Maybe I just need to work on it and pray about it.
Well, and I think you're just getting to a day where it's going to be that direction. Most people that are printing books now are doing a lot of print on demand. And so, but anyhow, so that's something that we've wanted to do, and the Lord's allowed us to do with the ministries here. We've got, we're trying now. Brother Stewart started the ministry of Global Baptist as Global Gospel Projects, and basically just what it said, projects that would help to further the gospel. And they would buy bicycles for Filipino missionaries. They were involved in purchasing time for radio stations abroad. We actually just were able to do some of that ourselves with a dear brother who's working, who is carrying on some of the ministry of Brother Cates. And so those kinds of things with that. But throughout all of it, when the Lord called me into the ministry, He called me to pastor, and I knew that at the time. The verse that God uses, I'm sure it's one He's used for a lot of other men, but it was, if a man desire the office of a bishop, he desireth a good thing. And so that was always my heartbeat. And when we stepped away from the pastorate, it wasn't like I was just lamenting and upset,
Right.
Why can't I? But I just felt like in my spirit, there's going to come a day I'm going to probably pastor again. Now, my mindset was, 15, 20 years down the road, I'm going to leave these ministries and then go pastor a church. I had no idea God would have had me do both at the same time.
Right.
But that's the way it's worked out. And so we just recently, matter of fact, the first Wednesday of this month, Big Cove Missionary Baptist Church called us to be their pastor. And so We've been interim for the last 6 months and been still been conducting the ministries here day to day. I'm here every day in the office, except I usually take Tuesdays off just for study and things. And Brother Ben takes Wednesdays off so he can study the pastor here. And so we switch days up like that. But I'm still keeping office hours. We're still doing the work of the ministry here. But now on top of that, pastoring a church. It's 90 miles away, so we've got some driving to do on Sundays and Wednesdays. But man, the Lord's been gracious. The church has been kind to us.
You graciously invited me and allowed me to preach there Sunday twice, and it's a sweet church. Good people. And you got the camper you get to stay in. Just a beautiful area.
Sure.
And I'll say this: we've never been to North Carolina, but we came out here, and I don't know if I'm in Arden or Asheville.
This is technically Arden, yeah.
But wherever I'm at, Arden, this is some beautiful country, man. I mean, we lived in Montana, and we know what that beauty looks like, and it's very similar, but yet it has its own distinct, individual part about it, and man, it's been awesome. So.
Well, I'm a mountain boy through and through. I grew up about 75 miles from here, in the same Appalachian region, just up on the state line of Tennessee, or just inside North Carolina. And I've been here my whole life. We live about 20 minutes the other direction now down in Hendersonville. My wife and I met her there. My dad moved there when I was 9. I moved there full time when I was 15, and then met her. We married. And we're coming up on 23 years now of marriage. Poor thing, she's had to endure so much.
Yeah, she looked tired, brother.
She's worn out, but it's mostly just because of having to be married to me.
Yeah.
But anyhow, the Lord's called us. It's a privilege, man, just to get to serve the Lord together with your wife, and we, for these 4.5 years, been in full-time ministry together. And when I've not been on the road, we get to jump in the car and ride to the office together. And we have, of course, most of the time Brother Ben's there, but we all get to sit around and have devotions in the morning before we get started. And Brother Matthew Morgan, he runs a tree business, and he calls that the safety meeting. And they have devotions every morning before they get started. So it's been nice to do that kind of thing, and just the fellowship and the goodness of the Lord.
If you're going to do tree service, you do need a meeting.
Yeah, you definitely need a safety meeting when you're doing tree work.
That ain't no lie, man.
But the Lord's kind of just leading us and making things clear and helping us, and we're excited. The church is doing well. I mean, they were without a pastor for nearly a year and a half, and they never missed a lick, man. They just kept doing everything. They had Bible school. They did everything like they would have done had they had a pastor. And then and on top of that, tonight, this Wednesday, we'll have our third Wednesday night service. We've been moving to the local nursing home there on the Cherokee Reservation, and they did that on their own. They had gone at Christmas for some caroling, and Brother Kenny, one of the men in the church, got a burden, said we need to go back. So they started that,
No, that's good.
And then we have outreach to the addiction recovery ministry there, and man, just open doors and opportunities to preach, and people that are hungry for the word, and it's been a blessing. And I'm really excited, man. I love it. We've been, like I said, preaching through Acts. I've been at the nursing home. I'm preaching through 1 Peter. And man, nursing home ministry is one of my favorites. I cut my teeth in the nursing home. I think the third sermon I ever preached, a dear man, Bobby Fisher was his name, and he had 2 nursing homes that he went to 2 or 3 times a week each. He would go to each on Sundays and to each on Wednesdays, and I think he split one other day every week, and he would go to these nursing homes. And he had been doing it for probably 20 years, I think he told me. Yeah, it was 20 years, because I had surrendered to preach. I'd preached my first message in the church we were members of. And he came up to me in a service there, because he would attend. I don't think he was a member there. He would just come pretty regular. He was very unorthodox. Bobby Fisher, if you ever saw him, you'd never thought he was a preacher. He had work clothes on. He was out in the yard working all the time and different things. He never wore a belt, always had on a ball cap. His button-down shirts would have like welded burns in them, He's just an old country guy, man, but he loved the Lord. But he come up to me after about my first or second message there, and he said, "Hey," "we're having our 20th anniversary service at this nursing home I go to." He said, "I want you to come preach it." I said, "Oh, man, great. I'd love to." So he's talking about this 20th anniversary. I'm pumped, dude. I'm like, yeah, I'm preaching a 20th anniversary service, you know. And so I show up at this nursing home on this Sunday morning. It was a Sunday afternoon. And I go into the foyer, and there's two men in wheelchairs sitting in the foyer. And Brother Bobby tells me, he's like, yeah, he said, don't worry about that. He said, we're going to start singing. Usually when we sing, they'll start coming out. You know, they hear us singing and they'll come out. I said, okay. So, and I thought, well, whatever. I had my 20th anniversary message, I was excited about it. So we start singing. And we sing 3 or 4 songs, and we're singing our hearts out. And one lady had come down the hall, and I thought, finally, here comes somebody. Well, she walked in, did a little loop-de-loop, went right back down the hallway. And so finally, I guess he gave up on anybody else's coming. He said, all right, Brother Brandon, you come on and preach to us.
There's 2 guys.
There's two guys, my wife and Bobby. That's all that's in the room. And even the staff is disappeared. I don't even know if anybody's working that day at this point. And so I start preaching, and this is no lie. The old man on my left fell fast asleep, never budged the rest of the service. And the old man on my right never blinked. He stared at me the entire time, and the man, his eyes had to be as dry as the Mojave by the time this was over because he never blinked.
Man.
But man,
That's a rough crowd, brother.
But God let me preach like there was 150,000 people in there, and I had the best time that I could possibly have had preaching. And they never made a sound. They never made a grunt. There was nothing.
Yeah.
And then so we get out of there, and I'm thinking, boy, I had a good time, but I was certain I was the only one.
You built this thing up, man. 20th
yeah, I was
anniversary,
expecting so much better. So then we go down the street because he wanted me to preach at his other one after this. And so we go down to the other one that afternoon, and I preached there. But man, the Lord just put it in my heart, nursing homes. And so I would go every time he would call. And then when I pastored, we went to 2 different ones 3 times a month. And I loved the nursing home ministry. And that really, honestly, that was one of the things that tore my heart out worse than anything when I left the first church is I knew this meant I'm going to be gone and I'm not going to be able to maintain any kind of regularity in the nursing home ministry. So I had to give those up. So when they told me they were going to start going to the nursing home again, I was tickled to death.
See, that's interesting. I figured you went over there and got that going.
Yeah,
that's
no,
good
they
to hear
did that.
Kenny did.
And I think it was just the Lord too, just because that's something I've always enjoyed. I had so much just fellowship with some of the saints there, and a lot of these, and we since we're on it, man, we need more people doing that kind of thing.
Okay, you're convicting me now, brother.
Well,
I've done it in a couple places lately, and one of them fizzled out, and the other one we've been so hit and miss. It's kind of embarrassing.
Probably the most in the flesh I've ever been when it comes to preachers and ministry was I called a fella that had just surrendered to preach out of another church in the area one time, and I said, "Man," I heard you preaching now. I said, "I've got a nursing home service every Tuesday. Would you come preach?" And this is what he told me. He said, "Oh, I ain't got no heart for them nursing homes." And I thought to myself, no, you ain't got no heart to preach.
Exactly.
And if you can't go to a nursing home and preach, then don't try doing it at your church, And it just
Think
burnt
about
me
what
up.
James said, pure religion.
Yeah, it ran all over me, But then I found, okay, the young guys who do want to preach, who are going so many times, they got a zeal and no knowledge, and that's wonderful. And I'm sure the people in those places enjoy it. But what I have found is there are a lot of mature saints of God who are in those places and are no longer able to go to church.
Exactly.
And they need somebody to minister to them, and they're hungry. And brother, I went into those nursing homes and just started expounding the word. I was preaching through the Sermon on the Mount when we started one of them. And I was probably in the middle of chapter 6 by the time we went to the nursing home. And so I just started it over there at the nursing home. And I was preaching through the Sermon on the Mount, and brother, they were absolutely eating it up.
Yeah.
There was this one dear lady, Miss Janie, and brother, she loved God as much as she loved breathing. And that's all she wanted to talk about.
Yeah.
The staff would even tell me, if you go in Janie's room and try to talk to her about anything but the Lord, she just shuts down. She wasn't
having it, brother.
But she had a better handle on the scriptures than most preachers I've ever met. And I would preach something, and she would start talking to me about the scriptures, and it would just blow my mind. And so, and then through that, in a sense, you're their pastor. They may have a membership at a church that they can't go to or whatever. And I mean, I had funerals out of those things, and I've had opportunities to minister to families and stuff. And man,
now see, when we did nursing home ministry, the people would, you're used to them coming, and then all of a sudden they're not there, and you think, well, it could be a doctor's appointment.
Yeah.
Then you go ask, oh no, they died.
Yeah, they passed
and they
away.
would, now I think legally they can't.
Yeah,
but still, you're kind of get to know them, and
yeah,
and you're like,
yeah.
Let me ask you this: I have found this before. That when we went to this one town, Pauls Valley, and we was doing every Sunday we was having a service, and there was a few workers, but this one lady in particular, she'd sit over there and she'd fold towels, and finally, and the whole time, and you're thinking, man, she's pretty slow, Yeah. But she told us, she said, I can't get to my church no more because I have to work here, and she said, I'm so glad you guys came in. I can just. So it's like it's not even just the residents there, but it's the staff.
Yeah, I don't know how many times staff have sit in and listened, and it's an outreach. A lot of guys, their only idea of outreach is a bus ministry or a door ministry or a street evangelism. I'm for all of it. I say do all of the above.
I do too.
But man, as far as just going somewhere wanting to be a blessing and ended up getting a blessing, the nursing home. Now there's some crazy stuff happens too. I mean, you get some wild stuff at times, and then you get some. There was an old man in one of them, and he was an atheist, and he wanted everybody on the planet to know he was an atheist. And man, the first few times he and his wife actually came in together. I remember the first service, and I believe she was a believer. She definitely had a decent testimony, but he just never had. And she passed away, and so he would still come. And I think at first he was just coming because she had always liked to come.
Yeah,
but he was so hateful. Yeah, just so hateful.
Yeah, I had one of those. That Dean I was telling you about.
Yeah,
the guy that couldn't hear me.
Yeah,
always having a conversation.
Yeah, but he could talk to you. Yeah, it's just but at the same time, I had opportunity after opportunity to preach the gospel to that guy.
Yeah,
and I don't know what would have come of it. We left, he was still alive when I left there. Maybe some other preacher came in there and I don't know.
Yeah,
but there was an opportunity. And there's not a lot of heart for it. There's no reward. There's no quote unquote reward.
You take street preaching. A lot of guys post it and they'll do something for you. God was glorified.
Then they get their likes,
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you're not going to be able to film a nursing home. I mean, like one time, talking about wheeling the people in, they brought in a little old lady, and brother, I mean, she's flat on this bed. Okay. And I mean, to the point that when I'm preaching, I keep looking down, and I can't see no air, that sheet moving, and I'm thinking, man, is she gone?
Did she just expire?
Well, at the end, right there at the end of the sermon, I was kind of wrapping it up, and I preaching about eternity, and I said, how long is eternity? And man, I mean, she sprung up. It scared me. She goes, forever. And I mean, I was kind of jumped. I was thinking, man,
she lives.
I thought she was dead, But yeah, the Dean, the atheist guy, I don't know what it was. He liked me. He liked to come, but he didn't believe none of it. But he said, hey, I got a couple of religious books I want you to have. One of them was, I don't know, it was a pretty popular mainstream book, but the other one was George Carlin.
Oh my goodness!
And that picture of the
book of George Carlin.
And I'm like, what? And I open it up, and I just open it up, and I mean profanity, the Lord's name. I mean. And I'm like, he don't realize, I told him as a kid, I said, let's get this in the trash,
You're right.
But yeah, in his mind, though, he just thought it was a religious book, wanted me to have it. And I was like, yeah, thanks.
Right.
But.
And there's one of the other things, too, is man, the people I've dealt with in those nurseries, you don't have to wonder what they think.
No.
And I love that. Like, I don't want to have to guess. Just and sometimes it's rough, there was a dear lady, Miss Irma. I actually had gone to church with her when I was a kid. She went to the church that I kind of grew up in a little bit. And she was pretty ornery even back then. But she got way worse when she got up in years and But man, she loved me and was and you know, she would talk about when I was a kid in the church with her there, and she said she used to mess with my toes, but I don't think she did. She must have had some other kid in mind. But if a sermon went well, she would say, "Oh, that was a good. Well, you really helped me." But if it didn't, because I usually rolled her back and forth, you know, all the way back to her room. I really don't know what you were talking about tonight, you know, and just that kind of stuff. And man, it was, you know, even that, it's like, man, that's such a blessing.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Well, you know, you're talking about the singing started. Usually there was always somebody with me that, you know, would sing, you know, bring their guitar, like Justin Wright, Misty, they used to go with us. We'd go together, and he would do the singing, you know, he'd play guitar and stuff. And well, this one particular Sunday, nobody's
Yeah.
coming, and it's just on me. Now I told you, I led songs
Yeah,
a
those
long
are
time
rough.
ago.
Yeah.
I am not a singer,
Me neither. You
but
found that out.
along the way, I learned enough on the guitar to chord a couple of songs. So man, I get my guitar, I tune it all up, and I bring it over to the nursing home. And I told you about that Barbara Jean, you know. I got through singing, and she goes, "Sir, you sure sing pretty." I was like, I got one fan, man. It's Barbara Jean.
One fan. That's all you need is one. Keep you going.
Oh man,
But
yeah.
it's been encouraging with that going on, and then just had a great Bible school. The Lord's been good, and you know, at this point, you just whatever the Lord wants, man. The night I got saved, and we've talked a little bit about it. I thought I was rededicating or whatever, but the prayer that I prayed, I said to the Lord, I said, "Lord, whatever is left of my life, it belongs to you." And man, I'm ashamed of how many times the Lord's had to remind me of what I said, but I'm thankful that He has, and He has compelled me to honor that since that time, and that's just where we are, man. Just Lord, whatever's left is yours. I don't call the shots of my life. I'm not in charge. I have a plan. I have commitment. I have, you know, I'm willing to do. And, you know, when I pastored before, I thought, I'm going to die right here. This is going to be where I'm going to be. I had no intention of leaving. And even had to express that to some different ones that, you know, I had a man interested in having me come take his place in the church. And I told him, I said, I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to die right here, you know. And the Lord had to do some things. And a lot of that I found out later was just pride, you know.
Yeah.
Sadly, that's what it boiled down to.
Yeah.
I'm going to be that long tenured pastor that stayed somewhere and, you know, outlive the haters and, you know, and gain the respect of the one. You know, you just have these things in your mind.
Well, you know people that's done that,
Sure,
and
sure.
know, you want to
and
aspire to
you
that.
respect them, and,
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, man, that's all well and good, and I think you shouldn't be anywhere if you're planning on looking for the next way out. But at the same time, you got to understand you're not in charge.
No, that's a great point right there. That if you're somewhere, wherever you're at, you need to be there.
Be there.
And if
sir.
God says it's something different, you know, it's just like when we left Sovereign Grace and came to Bowlegs. Now, originally, I was just coming to preach one sermon. That was it, you know. And I mean, it wasn't anything other than they were looking for a pastor, and I said, hey, if you guys ever need somebody to fill the pulpit, if you don't have anybody, you know, I said I'm available on these dates, you know, and so anyway, providentially, I got over there and never made it back, you know.
Yeah.
They asked me to fill in till they could find an interim, and then COVID hit. But you know, the thing of it is, you know, with the church there at Sovereign. You know, I came back on one Sunday because they were all like, why, you know, what's going on?
Yeah.
And I just told them, I said, look, this is what we feel like is going on. It feels like God is opening doors. We're going that way, you know. It wasn't like, I mean, I didn't want to leave where I was at.
Right.
I mean, just my personal feelings was we loved our church. These are my best friends, you know. It's like, I don't want to leave here.
Sure.
But at the same time, we would always preach about, you know, going out to where, you know, missionary, whatever it may be, you know, whether it was an existing church that needed help, you know, whatever. And I'll say this, Bowlegs was a pretty good place. Just, I mean, they got a real servant's heart there.
Sure.
So, there were things that did change, but all in all, there were some really good people. And but the thing of it is, you don't want to be living a lie where you're at.
Yeah.
Like you're up doing it, but you're wanting to be somewhere else.
Yeah.
So
And two, there's this mindset, and this is part of the whole career preacher thing. It's like, okay, well, I'll stay here till a bigger church calls, or
yeah,
and man, as far as pastoring goes, as far as the size of the church, I made a lateral move. Like it's, we had about 35 or 40 in the first church I pastored, and you didn't get to see them because we had so many out this past Sunday, vacations and things. But we might have 50.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
On a normal Sunday, and and so it's like, it's great. I feel like the Spurgeon quote. I don't want more than this to be responsible for. But at the same time, some of these guys that are it's like they came out of school and they got a degree and they're like, okay, well now what am I going to do? Well, I like to talk to people and I don't mind studying the Bible. Maybe I'll be a preacher, And then they go here for a little while and they start putting resumes in about a year in at all these other outfits, and it's like, come on, man. And really, I think there's just a lack of commitment a lot of times. But you got to be committed to the right things and in the right way, and then being willing to move if God does say move. That's
amen.
But at the same time, He's in charge of it. He's calling the shots, and only one thing matters, and it's the will of God.
Yeah.
You take other things into account. You know that this may affect that, and this is going to have an impact. But at the end of the day, what God wants is all. It's literally all that matters. And you do that and trust Him with the rest.
Well, you look at like the Book of Acts. You're preaching through it, and you get to those places where the people are just weeping. They don't want Paul to go.
Yeah.
And
they're going to go.
And there is going to be that. I mean, when you leave a church or something, there's going to be some heartache on both sides. And, I think of Brandon and Emily going out to California, it's huge culture change. And even though they're in Northern California where it's better than Southern as far as the
Still California.
the culture, I think about them guys a lot. I told him a while back, I said, I think about you guys a lot more than you probably know. And because they got a family and all those kids, all their friends they had, and all this has changed. But that's where the reality of the Christian faith starts becoming real. It's like it isn't just this, we got our perfect little picture thing here and all of our,
Yeah.
That's great if that happens, But when God says, "Hey, I need you over here,"
Time to go.
it's it's like, wow. We were praying about going to Ireland there for a couple of years. I mean, we prayed like
I
9.
think everybody's prayed about going to Ireland.
True, it is. I'll tell you what happened. We went over there on our 30th anniversary, and it's just that. It's
Sure,
just
it's
man. We
beautiful.
always wanted to go,
No doubt.
but we were in the southern part, where it's mostly Catholic.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm looking around, and you would see a Methodist church every now and then. We saw a Baptist church, But what's going through my mind is, it's like, where are all the churches? So I come back home, I get on do some searches, and you find out that in a country, now this is counting northern and the bottom part, there's like 4.5 million people. It's less than 1% evangelical Christianity. This is what this statistic said. It said there were 5,000, let's see, how'd this go? No. There were 70 towns with a population of 5,000 or more that not only did they not have a church, there was not one Christian witness in those towns.
Wow.
Not one Christian. Mm. And you're thinking, man, this is like the size, not even near the size of Arkansas or something. Maybe about the size, geographically, but 4.5 million people, and there's like that's what they have.
Yeah.
And then I met with a couple of pastors, and one guy was at a place called Westport. His name was Podge. He'd been pastoring. He's a native Irish guy, pastoring there for 20 years, maybe a little bit more. And he said, my congregation's 15. Now I think it's grown a little bit since then. But I did ask him this. I said, if a guy was going to come to Ireland, what is one thing he would need to know, to come to Ireland, what you'd have to be ready for? He says, trying to plant church in Ireland is like trying to plow granite. He said it's long and it's hard.
Yeah.
And this, I joke a lot about this when I'm preaching. And I said, "What do you guys think you're 5-point Calvinists? You know, you're 5-pointers." I said, "You're really 4." And you know, they're trying. And I said, "It's number 5." We don't have a whole lot of perseverance in the American church. If it doesn't happen easy and fast, we bail.
Yeah, we bail out.
And so, but listen, brother, we've been on here about 1 hour and 15 minutes. We are about to head out. It's kind of bittersweet. Part of me, I'm thinking I kind of want to be back in Oklahoma on Sunday for Father's Day, but we got some folks up in Indianapolis that we're going to be in Kentucky at the Ark, and we're just a couple hours from them, and that's the guy I was talking to a while ago, and so we kind of want to do that, and then long ride home, but man, it's been great just being here, getting to visit with you and your wife and everything, and meet the church and all that stuff.
It's a blessing to have y'all, man. I'm glad you were able to finally get to God's country.
Yeah, I won't deny that, man. It's a beautiful place out here.
Well, and we're blessed, and it's like anybody. I think everybody feels that way about wherever they were born and raised, and there's an innate love for it. But I've been a lot of places, man, and I can't find anywhere like the mountains of Western North Carolina.
Now, I might argue that. I lived up there in Montana, and I mean, it's like
I've traveled up through there.
It's different. I mean, like sometimes when you're up in the mountains, here or there, it could be either one. I mean, the landscape and all looks very similar. I think the difference that we kind of notice is you guys, like, there's more just evergreen type stuff there, whereas your mountains are just covered with, some of it's evergreen, but it's just all kinds of trees, just thick.
The air's a little thicker too, I think, here.
Yes, that's true. My wife, she said, smell that. She said, this is not the way it is in Montana,
Right.
I'll just be honest, it has a cleaner type feel. Not a my dad's bigger than your dad thing. It just, and it's probably because it's drier climate, and stuff, and less of the bugs flying around.
We definitely got our share of bugs.
They do have some vicious, what they call deer flies. They're a little bit smaller than a horsefly, but man, them dudes are, they're vicious. But no, man, it's been great. I mean, we're just trying to get away and just clear the mind a little bit.
Sure, man. Well, I'm glad y'all were able to, and we're here if you need a place to stop in.
Hey, I love it, man. Hey, last thing, anything else you'd like to share with anybody?
No, we've pretty well
covered
it, I think.
I'll say this. If you want to know more about revival literature or global missions, you guys are on the website, right?
Yeah, revivallit.org. My number's 828-777-4923. It's not hard to find. You can Google it. It's out there. And the church there, Big Cove Missionary Baptist Church, we're on sermon audio now. And the Lord's good.
Yeah.
He knows what he's doing, and he does all things well.
Amen about that. Amen. Well, brother, until next time, we're going to sign off. So this is Pastor Ronnie Qualls with my guest today, Brandon Harrell. And we're going to sign off right now. God bless each one of you.